causes of pressure in your life which you know impact your mental health?
Yes.
Give us some thought, but yes.
You can wait to answer if you think about it.
I got more. Yes, we're both parents, and we both work in what would probably be called quite stressful jobs. So those together, and with children being quite young at the same time, and then everyone experiences financial pressures at every level, especially those that have to incur the costs of childcare at the rates that are currently being expected. You know, there are pressures coming from all quarters at all times, especially at this stage in my life. It's obvious what the issues would be that would cause that kind of pressure, and it's a lot to handle. I'm not asking for sympathy, because there are thousands of people going through the same thing at this moment, and many that will be going through a similar thing or just come out the other side of it, and then there'll be another pressure that will come on. So I think that there are always pressures, and the important thing is to talk about it, have that support network, even if it's just one person that you talk to about it, and not letting it get on top of you before you ask for help.
Essentially, it's normal to feel overwhelmed by life, isn't it? And we all do from time to time, and it's becoming okay with that. Yeah. How about you, Paul?
It's exactly the same. I mean, I've got 2 young children. Eldest has started school, so constant sickness at the moment, which is great fun. The job, though, again, the roles that we have, but also the people that we're having to deal with. I mean, very often you're dealing with people who are traumatised themselves, and you're sort of taking on a lot of that, so you're getting pressure from that. Just having children, I mean, as anyone who's had children knows, that's a huge pressure, and everything around that, whether you've got children or want children, or you have children and they're going to school, or they're sick, or decisions and all that sort of stuff. Again, I think something I'm probably guilty of, and this perhaps feeds into the conversation, is my role as father. I have to make sure that they're provided for, and I take on that pressure. I'm not saying that that's unique again to men. I think that's mothers and fathers. But I suppose for a long time I perhaps saw that as, I have to be breadwinner, I have to make all the money, and I have to make sure that my children have a good life. So there's an immense pressure with that. But yeah, I mean, it's just general life stuff, isn't it? I mean, as you say, there's financial pressure everywhere. We recently moved house, so the house is in an absolute state, so there's all those pressures around that. And again, no sympathy required. It's
I
life
moved
choices.
a year ago and my house is still a state, so I'm with you.
I mean, overwhelmed, I think, is the right word. I mean, I think a lot of people probably experience that, and very few people are prepared to say, actually, yeah, at times I feel overwhelmed about stuff, because there's a lot going on. And again, that's something where I think people just need to know they're not alone. Like, yes, the pressures are always going to be different, and I'm not for any moment saying that my pressures are worse than anyone else's, because there are plenty of people out there, again, the clients that we deal with, who have far more challenging things to deal with, but that doesn't make them any less valid. Whatever you're dealing with can feel very, very pressurised, can feel very overwhelming for the individual. And I think that's, again, a message that we have to get out there, we have to talk about more, so that people, as you rightly said, get support, they acknowledge it as early as they can, and try and address it if they can.
Yeah, definitely.
We're both very passionate about gender equality as well, and one of the things I was thinking about at the weekend was, I don't know when was the last time you saw the original Mary Poppins, but it came on in our house the weekend, and when George Banks comes home at exactly 6:01, he has his brandy, he has his pipe, slippers, the children have been fed as he expects, they come in very well disciplined, they're expected to go straight to bed, and then they've got a cook and a nanny. He sits down in front of the fire, reads the paper or something, right? He gets to switch off and just be selfish until he goes to sleep.
Is that not what happens in your house?
Yeah, so, but exactly, so it doesn't happen anymore, for good reason. My wife works in a very similar job to me, same hours, same pressures. It doesn't mean that, and we share the childcare responsibility according to what's going on in our lives at the time. So men don't have the so-called luxury of the old days of being able to switch off at the end of a day. They quite rightly are involved in all of the other aspects of their family life, and so that's just the nature of what modern family looks like now compared to the days when things were worse for women. So yeah, but I was reflecting, it'd be nice to just get back and be able to put the feet up without the bedtime and arranging
There's a point about expectations there as well in the workplace and the equality, and sort of straying a little bit from International Men's Day, but I think if you sort of flip that on its head, I think sometimes there's still more expectations of men in the workplace where there's a children dynamic, whereas I'm not saying there's more forgiveness or if that's the right word, but if you've got a working mother and she's like, oh, I've got to go because the kids are sick, or I've got to ask for flexible arrangements or something like that, it's kind of expected, and it's kind of normal, whereas I think as a man, when you're sort of doing that, it's still not necessarily normal. I mean, something I did when my first daughter was 1, is I dropped my working hours down, so I work 4 days a week, and it was very much a sort of raised eyebrows. Oh, okay, this is new. Very, very supportive. I mean, there are lots of actually women, frankly, in my workplace that were supporting that. But I still got questions asked of me like, do you not value your career? Do you not, like, all these sort of really awkward things? And you sort of think, okay, like, that's how it's perceived, that I'm choosing my children over my career. Whereas I think, arguably for women, and I appreciate that that's not always the case, and there is massive gender discrimination issues still, which is a whole separate issue, but I think arguably for women that's less of a battle, I think, to sort of say, actually, yeah, I'm going to be there for my children, I'm going to be involved in my children's lives.
I had something very similar. So I was going to do shared parental leave with our 3rd child, but he was born just before lockdown, and we changed. That wasn't going to suit us at the time. So, but I remember talking to my parents about it, and their view was, what is the point in having 2 broken careers? So, I mean, obviously I didn't listen to that, but that is still a perception of a generation who still has influence, rightly or wrongly, and it's probably something that's not just of their generation either. There probably still are people much younger than them who still think that a man taking time out of his career to either take some parental leave or to drop their hours instead of expecting their other half to do it, and that there's something wrong with that they are sacrificing their careers for it. I mean, there's a toxicity in that. That's loaded. It's not that you've made a life decision that your priority at the moment needs to pivot towards family for the time being, because that's what's right for you and right for your children. It's, you are giving up something. You're not as invested in this firm, company, task, whatever it is, as you used to be, or as we thought we were. And there's a judgment in that people will feel without really processing it, just as Mother Nature would have it. At the same time that you're developing your career as a man or a woman, or as other, the time where you might choose to have children or adopt, that's usually going to be around the time that your career is developing. So the two are coming at really, really awkward moments, because lots of, you can't really choose, to have children when you're in your 40s and 50s, when you've built up your career. So you've got those competing pressures. It's very difficult to say to the people that have your career prospects, or that you perceive as having your career prospects in your hands, that you need to take a step back from that. And they are typically going to be people who are used to one person taking the brunt of that, and the man staying at work. It will still be odd to go through that for lots of young people.
And it's, I mean, again, sort of straying slightly, perhaps off topic, but I think the work that I do in family law, and you're very often talking about parental choices and decisions that have been made, and that is still a massive conflict for people, about sort of working and home life, and that imbalance that both perceive. And the reality, I think, still is that we almost automatically push genderised roles in that, because I mean, female maternity leave, generally university is better than paternity leave. So immediately you're sort of saying, well, mum is more important, and mum is going to be with the child for their first year or whatever it's going to be. But dad, 2 or 3 weeks after child's born, back to work you go. So I know shared parental leave, and there is breaking down of that, but I think as a society we need to look at, is that the right approach for not only mum and dad, but also for our children? And what are we teaching them? Are we teaching them that mum stays at home, dad goes to work, and that kind of perpetuates? And again, I think it's sort of breaking all of that apart and blowing it open and just saying, can we do it better? Is there a better way of doing these things? And just the fact that we're talking about it now, I think is a great thing. And I think there's probably many men out there who are unsure on that, and they're unsure what they should be. And we talked about, what should a man be? Should I be I'm the person who, okay, yeah, I go to work and I make sure I earn all the money, and their expectations therefore may be that their wife doesn't. But also, what's the female view on that, or partner view, or whatever it might be. And I think that's something which is evolving quite rapidly, and I think generally society and businesses aren't necessarily keeping pace.